Planet Vero Studio is powered by the Nolan Group of eXp Realty. She is a beauty influencer from New York City who commands attention.
He is a lawyer born and raised in Florida who lays down the law.
And together they are the Lady and the Law. Here are your hosts of The Lady and the Law, Cindy Grossman and Mitchell Goldman.
Well, hello, Cindy. How are you today?
Doing great, Mitch.
You're looking great.
Thank you.
And Jesse, I got to say, you're looking great too.
Thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
There
Mitch.
you go. Put yourself on screen there so we can see you.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a new year, new time to talk about law-related matters. And what I'd like to talk about today is a topic you don't hear a lot about because maybe most people don't know about it, but to me it's interesting and it does come up more often than you think. The topic, drum roll, Jay, if you could give me a drum roll, please, just kidding. The topic is alternatives to bank financing. Now, I know you're thinking, what are alternatives to bank financing? Well, let me give you some ideas, and maybe these work for you as the seller. Maybe they'll work for you as the buyer. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but it's just an alternative to getting a bank loan. As you know, bank loans are not always easy to get. The interest rates have gone up a lot. The government has imposed a lot of regulations, which make it harder for people to qualify for a loan, both on a residential, buying a house, and also on commercial property. Not that these are necessarily bad things, because there was a lot of abuse in 2008, 2009. People got loans that they never should have received, and the economy suffered dramatically as a result. But these are all alternatives to having to go through a bank. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go through some different ideas and give you a perspective of the seller, and then give you the perspective as the borrower. So what do you think?
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay.
Because I see millions and millions of apartments going up, and people always say, well, why all these apartments? And it is obvious that there are many, many people, even, starting out, working for big companies in Brevard County where we live, that they can't get the loans. So instead, they're going into these rental properties where they have to rent. And don't get me wrong, they're beautiful, they're brand new. There's so many being built right now. So it is, possible that somebody you think might be able to get a loan really cannot get a loan.
And the owner, all right, that's a good point. So let's talk about, say you want to lease a house, or you want to lease a condo from someone, and maybe at some point you'd also like to own the condo, or at least have an opportunity to own the condo. So there is one type of purchase, one type of, in essence, it's a financing arrangement. It's called a lease with option to purchase, or a lease purchase, or lease to own. Mm-hmm. It's all the same, different name, but the same basic transaction. And what that involves, it involves an owner who has a piece of property. It can be a commercial piece of property. It can be residential. It can be a home. It can be a condo, or a commercial building, whatever type of structure. And for different reasons, the owner may have decided, well, I'm going to lease it to you as the tenant. And the tenant says, well, that's great, but at some point I'd like the opportunity to buy the property and live there or work there. And maybe they don't have the money right now to buy the apartment, buy the condo, buy the building, but it's something that they're interested in maybe in the future. And this way they control it. So what happens is, between the buyer the landlord and the tenant, the tenant would be the buyer, the seller would be the landlord. They enter into an arrangement like this. The tenant pays a certain amount per month, and in addition to that amount per month, they pay a little bit extra toward a purchase. And then the tenant also may be required to pay a larger amount called an option price. The additional amount per month plus the option price gets applied toward the purchase. Sometimes, if you have a very nice landlord, the landlord will also, instead of paying an extra amount per month, they'll apply a certain amount of the rent toward the purchase as well. And after a period of time, the tenant has the option to buy the property for a fixed price, or it can be a price determined by an appraisal. I think a fixed price is better because it's set and you don't have to get an appraisal. And then the down payment, the lender would consider the option price that you paid, if any, plus a little bit of extra money that you paid every month. That gets applied to the purchase price as well. So that helps the tenant, the prospective buyer, qualify for down payment. And now all that gets applied to the purchase price. Does this work in practice? Yes, it does. I've handled one transaction. I think it was earlier this year. This was a lease purchase arrangement, and I think it was for 20 years.
Wow.
This had gone on. It was a gas station. That was the longest I've ever seen something like this actually keep going.
That's a long time.
It was. I was shocked because within that period of time, you would have thought the tenant went away, the tenant defaulted, they would have purchased. No. And they got credit for all the deposit that they made, for any credits for the rent that they paid as per the lease. And it closed. It was a record for me.
Wow.
I don't usually see them going this long.
Wow.
Now, why does a landlord decide to do it this way rather than just maybe sell the unit or the property to the tenant? What are your thoughts? Why would a landlord elect this route?
I think possibly it's a relative and they're trying, to do something nice for their family member, because I think it's a great way for somebody to buy into a business or buy a house or buy a condo or something like that.
Well, that's an interesting idea. I'm trying to think if I actually ever saw that. I'm sure I have, but that's one good reason. Another reason, usually from the standpoint of the landlord, it's a property that, for whatever reason, the landlord's having a hard time selling.
Uh-huh.
So this is an alternative. Maybe the property needs some work, and the landlord doesn't want to put money into the property right away. The tenant's willing to invest in the time to fix it up a little bit. But as an alternative, if they put the money into fixing it up, they want to know that they can, buy the property.
Absolutely. Right.
And this also helps the tenant qualify for a bank loan, because they get credit for the initial deposit they made. And a lot of times, as I said, the landlord will say, okay, 25% of the rent that you pay goes to the purchase price if you buy the property.
Okay. So then I would think having a good lawyer to make up this agreement and this, document would be extremely important even before you start renting the facility.
Absolutely. You said the right thing. And it's important, too, from the standpoint of the tenant, that this lease option agreement be in writing, and also that it be recorded. Mm-hmm. Because if it's not recorded and something happened, the landlord could go and mortgage the property. The landlord could get a judgment against him or herself could die. And then the tenants...
What about selling it right from under them? Couldn't that happen as well?
Yes, but then, the new buy, and that would be a real problem,
right,
for the tenant. So that's why you want to, as the tenant, you want to put something in writing in the public records, because that way your interests are reflected and preserved.
Mm-hmm.
So the landlord couldn't do that, or that wouldn't be a problem,
right,
per
very
se.
important.
So I know this is an exciting concept. So we're going to talk about something a little bit different when we come back from commercial break.
Okay, sounds good.
The law offices of Goldman, Monahan, Tucker, and Bettine is here to help you with your personal legal challenges, business needs, and real estate matters. Since 1984, we have assisted countless numbers of Florida individuals and businesses with their legal issues. From trusts and estates, wills, real estate, and civil or criminal litigation, we pride ourselves on maintaining lifelong client relationships and would appreciate the opportunity to assist you and your family as well. Please call 321-639-1320 for further information on the law offices of Goldman, Monahan, Tucker, and Bettine. I'm a non-attorney spokesman.
Right now at Sunshine Furniture, it's New Year's sale time. We're clearing our warehouses to make room for new styles, and this means you can save on selected in-stock furniture from Lloyd Flanders, Beechcraft, Windward, Riverside, Universal, Capri, Telescope, and more. Sofas, dining sets, patio groups, occasional chairs, cabinets, bedroom sets, tables, lots of pieces on sale for inside and out. At Sunshine Furniture, we have the largest selection of coastal furniture anywhere, including a gallery of Lexington, Tommy Bahama Home, and Universal Coastal Living collections. Visit Sunshine Furniture now for our New Year sale. Also, all pictures, lamps, and accessories are half price. Sunshine Furniture, $12.95 US 1 in Vero Beach. Visit our website at sunshinefurniturecasual.com, and don't forget to shop our outlet and sales store just across the street.
Sunshine Furniture, the best in every way. Have a sunshine day. Sunshine.
If you are a Medicare or Medicaid eligible, wouldn't you love cash back benefits with a zero premium? Hi, I'm Bob Larson with a Better Solution Insurance, your local agency for Florida Blue. We'll make it so you're not paying for your insurance and you're getting cash back. What a deal! There's no money coming out of your pocket. Call a Better Solution Insurance.
Call 257-8600. A Better Solution Insurance. We have a solution for you.
One of the most honored musicals of the American theater. Don't miss Men of La Mancha at Riverside Theater. Winner of 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, Man of La Mancha is a powerful, funny, and heartbreaking musical. This story celebrates the perseverance of one man who refuses to relinquish his ideals and who is determined to see life not as it is, but as it ought to be. Inspired by the masterpiece Don Quixote. Don't miss Man of La Mancha, January 3rd through the 22nd at Riverside Theater. Get tickets at riversidetheater.com.
Need an enlightening pick-me-up? Visit Kristen and Cindy at Skinergy to energize your skin and keep it looking fabulous forever. Kristen can help with hair removal, sugaring to keep your whole body smooth and conditioned. Kristen will help you refresh and defend your skin while giving you a customized facial. Cindy helps skinergize and get you camera ready for your everyday look or special occasion. Visit Kristen and Cindy at Skinergy. Find them on Facebook under the Skinergy Squad.
And we're back babbling on about seller financing. So we talked about a lease purchase. Now let's take it one step further. Let's say that the tenant is ready to buy the property that we talked about. Well, the tenant has a few options, of course. They can go to a bank or a credit union and hopefully qualify for a loan, getting credit for the deposit that they made and rent credit. If they don't qualify for a loan at a bank or a credit union, well, there's another alternative, a few alternatives I want to talk about. The first is maybe they have a family member or a friend that would loan the money to the tenant, the purchaser, the buyer, to finance the property and so that they can purchase it. Well, that's fine. There are some restrictions on the ability of someone to loan to an individual if it's going to be that individual's homestead. It's a little technical, that were put in place in 2010, but that's always a possibility. And certainly it doesn't apply if it's a commercial property, those kind of restrictions. So what I more typically see is what's called seller financing. So let's say you have a commercial piece of property. This also applies to residential property, and you want to use the euphemism, tote the note. You're willing to do that as the seller. So instead of the buyer having to go to a bank to finance the purchase, the seller's willing to do it, to finance part of the purchase. Now, why would a seller agree to finance part of a purchase of a property that they own for the benefit of someone else?
Well, we mentioned in the beginning of the show, the rates have gone up so high. Somebody really wants to sell something, it's, locked in right there. Somebody who's pretty much happy with either the property or the business or the home that they're renting. So I think it's really a win-win, unless that the seller is needing the money in one lump sum, so to say. It's really not such a bad thing. But again, you should have a contract, that states, in case there's any type of, fallout or payments aren't made, they have, legal right to take back the property immediately.
Well, absolutely. Always get a good attorney. The best advice I can give you. But seriously, a seller will sometimes agree to, hold the note.
Right.
I just did a closing yesterday about this. It was a small two-bay commercial building, and I represented the buyer, but for whatever reason, the seller was willing to finance the purchase for the buyer. Now, some reasons that sellers are willing to finance properties for the buyer, they're tax reasons, because if you sell a property outright and you get your money all in a lump sum, you're taxed on it all at once. Whereas if you sell the property and you receive installment payments, monthly mortgage payments to go toward the debt, part of the payments are principal, part of the payments are interest, you're not taxed as the recipient all at once, because you haven't received all the money at once. So part of it is a return of your principal, what you paid for the property, and you're going to be taxed on the interest income, but the tax consequences aren't as much because you haven't received a lump sum. A mortgage is not a lump sum payment. Other reasons the seller may want to carry the note and do this kind of financing, because they like the steady income. It's a hard property to sell. This property that I just mentioned, it's kind of an older warehouse. It may be difficult to qualify for a conventional bank loan. The other thing, it's more attractive for the buyer because you don't have to go through the process of qualifying for a bank loan. There are expenses that you have with a bank loan that you wouldn't have with seller financing. There's no reason for an appraisal. Should still get a survey, but usually they're not points involved. There's savings on costs, time, because if you own the property, then you can close relatively quickly. Now, what are some of the drawbacks, or what are some of the concerns that the seller should have with this kind of financing arrangement? Well, now the seller's the bank, and if the buyer defaults on the mortgage to secure the note, then the seller is going to have to foreclose the mortgage and take the property back as collateral for the loan. That's not a quick process. That can take anywhere between 4 months to 9 months, even longer if the buyer files bankruptcy or the courts get burden. So the important thing from the seller standpoint, two things. One, they have to make sure that they get enough money down to cover what happens if the buyer doesn't make payments. And if you don't, then you're going to be out of luck. There can be damage done to the property. Meanwhile, you also have to make sure that you get enough money down to pay off any existing mortgage on the property, or you have your own funds to pay off any mortgage so that it's free and clear at the time that you do this kind of arrangement.
Can you hold any collateral? Like, can the person who's doing this hold somebody's collateral, so to say?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Thank you for reminding me. I was going to bring that point home, but I forgot. So thank you. Sure. A lot of time, the important thing I like to recommend that if somebody is going to carry the note, that again, they carry sufficient, that there's sufficient equity, sufficient payment made in case there's a default. I like to see at least 30%. So if you're selling a property for $100,000, the buyer needs to have at least $30,000 into it as a down payment. If the buyer doesn't, there's, as you suggested, what can be done? Well, the buyer can post additional equity. Maybe they have another property that has equity in it, or they can give you additional collateral to make up the difference. Maybe they can only put up $20,000 and you want $10,000 more in collateral. They have this other property that you can get a mortgage on as part of your transaction to cover that kind of shortfall. Because we always want to make sure that the buyer has skin in the game. Because if the buyer doesn't and they default, then you're going to have to deal with the mess as the seller.
Right.
And we want to minimize that possibility. We want to encourage the buyer to sell the property and pay you off rather than default and you have to take the property back. But if there's not a lot of equity, then that's not favorable to you as the seller.
Right.
So it works kind of both ways. But again, this is one way that I see, and especially with interest rates going up, on a short-term basis, even if you get an interest rate perhaps a little below market as the seller, it facilitates the sale. It doesn't mean you have to carry the mortgage for 30 years like on a home. Most of the time you don't. Maybe it's you amortize the payments over 15 or 20 years, but in 3 or 5 years, the mortgage is going to balloon and the buyer is going to have to refinance with you if you want, or pay it off by getting another loan from a bank or finding another source. Okay. So there are always alternatives, people willing to negotiate, and there are ideas out there. But as you noted, not wanting to sound self-serving, these are legal arrangements.
Absolutely.
And you need to work with a qualified attorney or advisor that can draft the appropriate paperwork.
That's right.
Because if you don't do it right, then it's done wrong and you find problems later. And the idea is, let's avoid the problems now. We resolve everything up front ahead of time. People know the terms and conditions. Boom, make the payments. Everybody's happy.
Right. So when your landlord comes to you and offers you this fantastic deal to buy either your condo, your business, or a corporate property, call the lawyer. Make sure, it's not something that you're stepping into blindly, and that you really will be able to do this in a responsible way.
And in a way that works for you and in a way that works for the seller, a positive outcome. So anyway, Absolutely. That's it. Thanks for listening.
And one quick thing. Can they contact you about that?
If they would like, 321-639-1320, extension 104. Happy to go over some more details.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jesse.